Hi everyone, I'm Catherine, the artist behind Bigelow Fine Arts. Back to the Insect Fun Fair. If this is your first time on this channel, welcome! Grab some pencils and come along and color with me. And if you like what you see, then hit that subscribe button to keep up with the color-alongs. I'm working from Kirby Rosanes' Worlds Within Worlds book. I post 3 times during the week, and I also have full palettes available for free on Patreon. Today is all about shading and nothing else. This will be a great way to help with contrast and get shadows in mostly the right places. I am only working with dark sepia, and my light is coming mostly from within the flower and from the fun fair. There will be a little secondary light coming from outside of the flower, but it will not be nearly as bright. I am starting on the outside of the leaf and beginning with some of the shading already put into the line art. Where the leaf curls back and out of view, I will have the shading be darkest. As I get some layers down on the back of the leaf, I will move to the part under the curl and begin adding in some layers there. The curl will be casting a shadow underneath that will be darker at the top and feather out as the shadow comes out from under the curl. The light from the fun fair will be lighting up the rest of the petal. I also will go through and add in shadows cast from the petals overlapping onto this petal, as well as down at the bottom where the light from the fun fair would have trouble reaching. This is a base layer, so now I want to go through again and darken and touch up just a little more before moving on to the next petal. The remaining petals will be worked up very similarly, but each petal will have a few differences unique to that particular petal. The overlap might be less, or the overlap's a little different. This second petal has a few sections on the surface of the petal with some line art showing some shading, so I put in some shading there. The third petal is at an angle, and part of the side of the petal runs into the funfair and makes it a little difficult to determine what is petal and what is funfair. The fourth petal is standing out quite far from the funfair and the rest of the flower, so the shading will be a little different because of that. The petal that sits almost in front of this petal will cast a deeper shadow over the side surface of the petal. I am working up each petal as a separate unit influenced by the things around it. As I go through, I'm sitting quite close to the page, and this will cause me to miss some things. So as I notice them, I go back and add or darken to help the contrast and shadows look right. On to the fifth petal, and the back is the main portion visible for this petal. It will also be quite dark as the light from the funfair should not be able to reach around this petal. I take a lot of cues from the line art when I can. I add in a darker shadow close to a dark line and feather it away from there. If there is any cross-hatching, I add it in a shadow there as well. On to the leaf tucked under the flower, and I am covering most of it but leaving a little highlight. Even in full shadow, I want to leave a little room to add in shaping when I come in with the green later. Onto the sixth petal, and I continue working my way methodically around the flower. This petal also bends away at a large enough angle that most of the petal would be cast in shadows, but I will leave space for a highlight and where it might be picking up reflected light. I go through and try to make sure that I am keeping my gradient smooth, or the harsh lines will show up under the other colors. This other leaf tucked under the flower will also get quite a bit of shading as it is mostly hidden from the light by the flower and lower petal. I go through and touch up all of the petals I've worked on at this point, darkening up the darkest areas and feathering out the shadows a little more to make smooth gradients. I notice these little things when I sit back and take a look at the whole picture. I'm moving back up to the top and working on the other half of the flower. The middle leaf doesn't need much as it is rather flat and the source of light is right there in front of it, so it should receive quite a bit of light. On to the next petal, and I work the overhang and the back of the petal, making sure they are dark and feathering out the shadow towards the light. And as hard as it has been on some of the petals, I have been trying to determine where the base of the petal is and adding in some shading down at the bottom where the light wouldn't quite reach. The next petal doesn't seem to have a curl and the butterfly is in the way, so I add in a little light shading at the tip that I can see and a little more at the base, then I move on. This petal has a side curl and some shading shown in the liner. I add in some more shading at the base as well. Only a couple more petals left. I find more of the petals between buildings and add in some shading. This one has a nice large curl over, but the front is more hidden, so there will not be as deep a shadow in the front part of the petal that can be seen. Moving on, this is a nice large petal that is closest to the viewer. The curl will have a lot of shading, but the face of the petal will be lit up from the funfair and will not have much shading visible from the viewer's angle. On this petal, there are a few darker leaves that come down from the edge of the petal, so I add in some shading beside those lines. This isn't a rule of liner, but weight of line gives the impression of shading. last petal of the flower, and because it is laying a little lower than the rest of the petals, it will have shadows from the other petals above it. I work my way along the side to the curl and back. I catch the last little leaf, then move on to the stem. The stem is a cylinder and will have the top cast in shadow from the flower. I do assume a small amount of ambient light coming from the right, so I shade the left side to be darker. The last large leaf, I add in a shadow along the back of the vein and feather that out. That is the shading base layer in place, and now I need to go through and touch up. I have been sitting with my face right up to the page and can only focus on a small area. But as I sit back, I begin to see lighter areas that need more shading, or places where I can bring the shading further down, and other places that could be darker overall. An easy way to determine if the shading is right is to take a picture and convert it to black and white or desaturate it. I took a picture, and the small screen combined with desaturating the photo helped me find a few more areas where the shadows were not quite right or were not dark enough. So I went back and touched up those areas, and now I feel that this is better shaded than it was before. If you give this undershading method a try, let me know how it goes. This is another way of determining shadows and shading. Thanks for joining me on this fun fair today. Let me know below or on social media if you colored along. I'd love to know how you did. I want to thank you all so much for coming along and joining in with me on this coloring journey. I appreciate everyone joining in with me, and I look forward to more of you coloring along with me. Please like, share, and subscribe to help that happen. Until next time, happy coloring.